Prop 20 is about criminal punishment and was put on the ballot by people who collected more than 300,000 signatures from registered voters in California. And the question to the voters is, do you want to make several changes to increase punishment for various crimes? So until 2011, people convicted of a felony served their prison sentence in state prisons, not in county jails. And then in 2011, state prisons were ordered by the courts to reduce their populations to no more than 137.5% of the designed capacity of the prison. This resulted in the release of 46,000 convicts and the transfer of felons who were convicted of non-serious, non-violent, non-sexual crimes from the state to the county jails. Then in 2014, voters changed laws to penalties for some drug and theft crimes, making about 10,000 inmates eligible for resentencing. Money saved by reducing the prison population was directed to mental health, drug abuse treatment, and victim services. A study by California Public Policy Institute found that these changes did not increase or reduce the violent crime rate. In 2016, voters again passed laws allowing parole for some nonviolent felons who had previously not qualified for parole. About 25,000 nonviolent state felons qualified to seek early release, but only about 3,700 of them were actually released as a result. Prior to 2011, the state's imprisonment rate was 431 inmates per 100,000 residents. 1 year later, the rate was 356 inmates, and by 2019, the rate had fallen to 317. Today, DNA is collected from people arrested for felonies, but not arrested for misdemeanors. Okay, so that's the way things are today. The proposal, Prop 20, proposes several changes. I'm going to list them, about 6 or 7 changes here. Penalties would be considered felonies instead of misdemeanors on some instances of theft of firearms, credit cards, and vehicles. 2 new types of crimes would be created with possible charges of either misdemeanor or felony. A serial theft, which would be a person that receives 2 or more petty theft convictions, and organized retail theft, which is a person acting with others to commit petty theft multiple times within 180 days. Also, some misdemeanors, including shoplifting, grand theft, drug possession, domestic violence, and prostitution with a minor, would require collection of DNA samples. Granting early parole to nonviolent felons would require consideration of more factors, including the felon's age, their marketability skills, their attitude about the crime, their mental condition, circumstances of the crime that they committed, and their risk of the prisoner harming the victim if they were released. Also, 51 new crimes would be considered as violent felonies, about twice as many as the existing law defines, and included in them would be human trafficking of a child, felony hate crimes, felony domestic violence, serial arson, and drive-by shooting. These crimes would no longer be eligible for parole. Local probation departments would be required to ask a judge to change the conditions of a felon's post-release supervision if the felon violated supervision terms for the 3rd time. And finally, prosecutors could request a review of the parole release hearings. So the estimated fiscal effects are an increase of tens of millions of dollars to costs related to increased jail populations, increased community supervision, and the processing of DNA samples. So a yes vote means you want to make fewer crimes eligible for early parole by adding more crimes to the list of violent felonies and then increase requirements for early parole. It means you want to recategorize misdemeanor and felony definitions of certain theft and fraud crimes. and you want to require DNA collection for certain misdemeanors. A no vote means you don't want all of these changes made to the current criminal law. Support for Prop 20 has received $4.3 million, mostly from police officers and sheriff's officers. And the people who support Prop 20 say it reclassifies certain crimes as violent felonies that should have been considered violent before. And they also say more DNA collection will just help solve more crimes. People against Prop 20 have donated $5.8 million, mostly from individuals, but there's also been $1 million from the San Francisco Foundation and a little over $1 million from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. People who oppose Prop 20 say this proposition contains too many confusing changes for one proposition, and they also say that some of these changes could be made by the legislature without coming to the voters.